Warning: Tongue and Geek contains heavy spoilers. If you haven't read, watched, or played the content being reviewed this episode, know that we will definitely spoil major plot points. Also, this show isn't for kids. We use words like and and it would take too much time and effort to edit them all out. Please don't tell our moms. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to Tongue in Cheer, where two more white guys on the internet give the gift of their unsolicited opinions on all things holly and jolly. I'm Isaac.
I'm Tyler.
And today we're discussing the... Oh, did you want to jump in from here?
I was just going to say, this is the final episode of Tongue in Cheer this year. Hey, that rhymed.
Aha!
And this is Isaac's birthday. Goddamn.
Yes, little did you all know that Tyler was secretly the Lord God Jesus Christ this entire time.
This is Isaac's Christmas present to me this year.
Mm-hmm.
We are covering Gremlins. Now, we will get into why this is a Christmas present as the pod progresses. So, what I want to ask you is...
Okay.
Is there a piece of media, be it a film, a book, a show, a video game, anything, that has just been a part of you for so long that you don't remember life before it?
Pokemon.
Pokemon?
Yeah.
Pokemon is that for you?
Pokemon is that for me. I do not recall life before Pokemon. Pokemon was my turn-on moment, where I stopped being a baby that would not remember anything to being an actual child who could remember things.
Okay. Would you say that's the piece of media that's closest to your heart?
It's definitely up there. I have strong feelings about Pokemon as a franchise. Yeah, probably. It's definitely formed a lot of my opinions on other media.
Okay. Because the reason I ask is because we all have those movies or games or shows or what have you. Some have multiple. I think we all probably have multiple to varying degrees. But the biggest one for me is Gremlins. I honestly don't have any memories before Gremlins. I don't even remember the first time I saw it. I don't remember becoming aware of it. It's just there, and it has always been there.
Right.
The oldest thing I own is an old Gizmo plushie that my mom gave me as a little tiny baby, as a 3-year-old. I never knew where it came from, and then when I looked into it, I think it's an original plushie from 1984 when the movie came out.
Wow.
So I've just had this ratty-tatty Gizmo my entire life, and just the movie has always been there, and it's hard for me to even discuss it in a way that's just not utter gushing and adoration. Because it's like my thing. I'm I'm the Gremlins guy.
This and Jaws are your top two movies, and they're basically interchangeable for first place.
Yes, they're basically interchangeable.
Which we'll get to Jaws eventually, but this was Christmas themed, so...
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess I could bring us into some background, because I am a font of knowledge about this movie.
Educate me. It's
got a pedigree. It's produced by Steven Spielberg. I mean, he was absolutely on fire in the 80s with producing credits. He made his name with Jaws in the 70s and just blew up to the name director of all time. It was written by Chris Columbus, and Harry Potter fans would probably know that name because he directed the first 2 movies in the franchise.
Yeah, he also discovered America, which, it's impressive. It's impressive he was around that long.
I know, the storied career and history of Chris Columbus.
Yeah. There's a whole... Yeah.
Did I call him Christopher or Chris?
You called him Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, I just assumed you were familiar, that you were close friends, which, I don't know how I feel about that, because he was a genocidal maniac, but he had a few hundred years to get over that,
He was a genocidal maniac, but he also wrote Gremlins, so...
Fair trade.
Anyway, for anybody who's confused, no, it's literally not
No, it's not. Goddamn Christopher. No, of course not, Tyler. You didn't have to explain the part that a man lived for 300 plus years.
You never know. With the way people are on the internet these days, you never know. He directed the first 2 Harry Potter movies. He also wrote and directed... Well, he didn't write it, but he directed Home Alone and Home Alone 2. So he's kind of been an institution in Hollywood for a while.
And Looney Tunes Back in Action, wasn't it?
No, that's Joe Dante directed Looney Tunes Back in Action, and he directed Gremlins.
That's right. Yeah, I got them mixed up.
What a lot of people don't know is that he wrote the script, and it was originally an R-rated sort of monster horror movie. He got the idea. He was living in an apartment that was infested with mice, and he would hear them scurrying behind the walls and in the ceiling, and they'd scamper across his hands when he was asleep, and it would just creep him out. So that was kind of the origin of the story. As big of a fan as I am, I've actually never read the initial draft. It's available on the internet. You can read it whenever you want.
Oh, that's surprising.
It's surprising because, like, as interesting as the idea and the details of the R-rated script are, like, I can't break away from what the movie is. And I don't want it to taint it, as silly as that sounds. But I know the details because... Gizmo was originally going to turn into Stripe the Bad Gremlin after the first act.
Oh, really?
Yep. And he was going to stay that way. The Gremlins explicitly eat people. There's a moment where they kill Billy's mother and roll her head down the stairs.
Oh shit! So it was a full-on horror.
Yeah, they eat the dog.
Damn.
And while I'm a gore hound and I love nasty, gory monster movies, a part of me would like to say, you know what? Alternate reality, I'd like to see like that hardcore R-rated Gremlins movies, but I can't help but think the personality and what makes the movie special would be lost.
It would have leaned a little... It's comedy horror, and it would have leaned maybe a little too hard into the horror angle if it had gone that route.
And Spielberg, in his infinite wisdom, was like, you guys, you got something here. This is good. We're going to do this. But let's reel back on the violence, and we're keeping Gizmo the whole time. Which, fucking genius.
Yeah.
Because, come on. Like, why would you get rid of... Yeah. Which, there's a funny marketing story about the movie, too. But for those who aren't in the know, I don't think anybody who would listen to this wouldn't know. It's a horror comedy set on Christmas. An inventor is on his way home, and he wants to get a present for his son Billy to bring home to him. He's in Chinatown. He gets led into a shop by a boy, and he's looking around, and he hears this cute music, and he discovers Gizmo, who's this creature that... What is it? He's like, that's perfect. I'll buy it. He brings it home. He, gives it to Billy, his son. It's all cute and it's sweet, but there are 3 rules that come with Gizmo, who is a Mogwai. That's what they're called, Mogwai. Bright light hurts it, and sunlight will kill it. Don't get it wet, and don't feed it after midnight. Yeah.
I want to hop in because I looked this up. I was interested to see if Mogwai were like an actual thing in like any Asian mythology. Turns out, sorta. They kinda are. The movie takes tons and tons and tons of liberties to the point where it's basically unrecognizable. But the word Mogwai, or Mogwai, I guess is how it's originally pronounced, is Cantonese for monster, evil spirit, devil, or demon. The Mogwai supposedly have a mating season that's triggered by the coming of rain, which might be the connection between like the water, making them reproduce in the movie. But actually what I found interesting was that Western culture had an influence on the term Mogwai because it was the Chinese translation of Satan in the Bible.
Really?
Yeah, the term
look at you Satan. Schooling me on esoteric Gremlins knowledge. Like, because it's such like an outlandish sort of movie-ish premise, I never thought to see if like it had any actual.
Yeah, I went to Wikipedia for 5 minutes. I copy pasted from Wikipedia.
That's interesting. That's cool. I'm gonna have to look into that myself.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't much else. There's some stuff about how it's connected to some, like, Hinduism and Buddhism. Like, Mogwai is made up of the terms Mo and Gui, and, like, they have connections to stuff, but it was kind of a stretch. But, yeah, I just thought it was cool that there is a little bit of basis in actual real-world mythology for these creatures. But, again, the movie takes lots of liberties.
Cool. I like that. The 3 rules. We've established that bright light hurts, sunlight kills, but what about the other 2? Well, if you get a mogwai wet, it multiplies. And if you feed them after midnight, they metamorphize. They cocoon, and they come out as larger, reptilian-looking, devilish, mischievous imps that are nothing but walking chaos. And I love this movie so much.
Can I bring up a point? And I'm totally stealing this from the McElroy's brothers of My Brother, and Me, because I was listening to their podcast recently, and I'm like going through the backlog. I've not caught up yet. I'm like in the 300s, and they had an episode where they were talking about Gremlins, and they brought up the fantastic point that like, the Mogwai are still Mogwai after they transform. Gremlins is basically a racial slur for the Mogwai.
Yeah, technically.
It's not their official term. Like, they just start calling them Gremlins because, like, one drunken douchebag in town is, like, talking about how, like, oh, the Gremlins will get in your foreign parts and everything and mess up our planes like they did back in the war. It's like, it's a racial slur for Mogwai.
Well, yeah, I mean, the term gremlins, apparently, its origin is from World War II when there would be mechanical malfunctions.
Right, yeah.
In planes and stuff like that. And, you got gremlins in there.
You got gremlins messing with your stuff, yeah.
And there was an old Roald Dahl book that was sort of kind of semi-adapted into a Looney Tunes short with Bugs Bunny, where it's one of the few where Bugs Bunny loses, where he's kind of in a battle of wits with a gremlin on a plane.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you've never seen that short?
I don't think so. The only ones that I've seen where Bugs Bunny kind of loses is the ones where he's up against the turtle, because they do like the turtle in the hair thing.
Wow, I'm surprised you haven't seen it. I can't remember the name of it specifically. It's like a hair in the air or something kind of like that. But I remember it was in the beginning of the Gremlins 2 VHS.
Yeah. So
I would always watch that in full with Gremlins 2 when I would put that on as a kid. As a kid, I just loved it because Gizmo, he's cute, and I love the crazy, nasty little monsters that came later and caused havoc in the town of Kingston Falls, where it's set. But as I got older, I appreciated the sense of humor that it has, because it's not cynical. There's a cynical edge to it, but it has a very sly, sardonic edge to it that never gets old. It's Joe Dante, the director, just taking Americana, taking Norman Rockwell, and kind of giving it the middle finger.
Yeah.
He kind of goes, it's kind of a masks off Christmas movie, but not in like an overt way. Because aside from like the central characters, everybody's just kind of an asshole in this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of assholes. Like I said earlier, there's the one dude who's totally racist about like foreign goods and foreign stuff. He's like, the Chinese don't know how to make no kind of equipment. This is American made and everything. Like, he's super xenophobic and everything.
Yeah, Murray Futterman, played by the late great Dick Miller, who was in pretty much every Joe Dante movie.
Yeah.
He's just a flat out xenophobe to like a comical extent.
Every
joke is just a xenophobic joke with him.
There's Mrs. Deagle, who's probably the worst offender. She's just this horrible old woman who basically hates everyone and runs the town for some reason. And she's trying to kill Billy's dog, our protagonist Billy's dog, the whole movie, because like he pees in her yard or something. He's basically just a mild nuisance, and she's like, I want your dog dead.
We're introduced to Mrs. Deagle. She is power walking down the street, inexplicably carrying the broken giant ceramic head of a snowman. And like, it's like visual language like that, just like visuals like that don't have any context that this movie has, that make it have such personality. You're like, okay, who is this lady walking down the street with a giant snowman head? What's going on here? She's going to the bank where Billy, our protagonist, works, and he has his dog Barney under the counter with him. And she's just like, your dog did this. My imported Bavarian snowman, you know? And she just goes in on like, I want your dog. That's how you're going to like pay me back for this, you know? And I'm going to kill him. Like, so she's threatening to kill his dog to his face in front of everybody. and nobody calls her out on it.
She pulls like a green goblin from the first Spider-Man movie too, because she's like, at first I was going to let your dog go down quickly, but now I'm going to make sure it's nice and slow.
Yeah, she's basically like, oh, I'll put him in my spin dryer on high heat, and it's like, Jesus, lady, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's such a dark movie and that leads into a fun fact that this movie and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom are what created the PG-13 rating.
Really?
Because yes, I thought I told you that before.
Probably. It's been a while.
Because while this isn't the R-rated version that was initially written, it's still got a lot of darkness to it. There's a lot of dark humor. There's a lot of borderline, on the edge kind of violence in it.
Yeah.
But it kind of created a mild controversy when it came out, because people were like, this is kind of violent. Like, it was marketed as a family movie, and the marketing for it was pretty vague. Like, they didn't really show the Gremlins, they didn't really show Gizmo, so people kind of expected like an ET-esque kind of movie. And then like 40 minutes in, it turns into this fucking crazy nonsense with these monsters.
Yeah.
So it kind of threw people through a loop a little bit. But oh god, where do we go from here?
Let's circle back for a second to the rule system, because we kind of just skimmed over that. I love a good rule system. We talked about this back in the Animorphs episode. And I think the Gremlins have a fantastic rule system, because while each of the rules is very clearly set and has very clear consequences, they also leave room in the movie for a lot of speculation about like how and why these rules might work the way they do. Like, for example, no water is because it makes the gremlins multiply. It's like, does that suggest that all gremlins are female or monogender or something? That, like, they all like, this is their form of reproduction? And if so, then, like, why is that a rule to never do? Why do we not want these things multiplying, at least in their standard Mogwai form? And what's also interesting is that, like, if they are, like, this monogender species that reproduces asexually, like, why are Stripe and the others so different from Gizmo, like, personality-wise? Like, they're automatically, like, a more mischievous and, you know, spiteful and mean than Gizmo is, for no real reason other than the fact that, like, we kind of need a villain here. But it's, like, it's fascinating to think of, like, how these creatures would actually, like, exist and function, and the movie gives you just enough room to do all that sort of fan speculation.
Yeah, and the fan speculation about like the rules and how it all works has been ongoing. Gremlins 2, because it's a sort of a meta sequel, makes a lot of jokes about the rules, you know, like after midnight where, you know? Yeah. And of course everybody loves pointing out, like, you can't get them wet, but they're in snow the whole movie. Isn't snow just water? You know, and they drink beer. Beer's primarily water, and
that's true.
You could poke holes in the rules, but like at the same time, it's such like a dark fairy tale-esque sort of premise.
Yeah.
That like it you know, like those aren't the kind of questions you're supposed to have, because it's such a simple. It's like a grim fairy tale.
Well, almost. Even if you do ask them, they're more asking for fun than to try and undermine the. There's a difference between being like, oh, holy shit, like, how do these things work, and being like, actually, they should have turned into more gremlins once they fell in the snow.
Oh yeah, of course, and I only say that because like that's how I like to view the movie, is through this lens of just like it being like a fairy / cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Like just like that kind of hint of magic to it.
Yeah.
Because amid all the chaos and cartoonishness, like there's a lot of themes you could dig into here. One mainly being, which is kind of spelled out at the end when Mr. Wing, the old Chinese man, who he didn't actually sell Billy's dad, the Mogwai, the kid, underhandedly kind of stole it from the store and gave it to him. Mm-hmm. He comes back, he's like, you know, you weren't ready. Like, you do what man has always done with nature's gifts. You guys always fuck it up. There's the obvious commentary there of, you know, people taking nature for granted, not respecting it, and then, you know, through negligence, like everything gets out of hand.
Well, let's touch on perhaps a problem with this movie.
How dare you?
Because this movie does rely on a lot of Oriental mysticism
Yeah,
it's sort of
I will agree that there is a bit of some dated Orientalism in the movie.
Turning like Eastern culture into something otherworldly and alien rather than, human culture. It relies a bit on that, and Mr. Wing is part of that problem. But what that does allow for is this sort of analysis of how, Western culture is specifically not prepared for the responsibility of the Mogwai, and the fact that they treat nature and, the world around them as if they were, gods amongst this world. So it's specific. The criticism that Mr. Wing has is specifically targeted towards Western culture. Like, even though
the movie is on his side completely.
Yeah.
But some of the optics of it are a little dated.
I would argue, the Orientalism, especially in the earlier parts of the movie, it's a little bad, but like it does bring up some good points, at least of how like Western imperialism and capitalism, make our treatment of the world around us make us feel entitled to everything just because, hey, I've got money, I paid for this thing, of course I should be able to use it however I want, and the consequences be damned, which is kind of an undercurrent theme here, with the inventor being like, I'll pay you a lot of money for this Mogwai thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to get into, is because Dante has gone on record as saying that like he wanted to get like a kind of a dig on commercialism in the movie, because although Billy's dad, he's not a bad guy at all, he's a nice, avuncular, mild-mannered father character, but there is sort of an undercurrent of like Western entitlement to it, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
He's like, he doesn't see anything in his shop that he wants until he hears and sees Gizmo. And he's like, I gotta have it. Here's $150. And not for sale.
Yeah.
Oh, $200. And he's like, no. And that's $200. It's like this like passive sort of like, like you said, like, I have the money. Why won't you let me have what I want?
And the fact that he's trying to purchase a living thing, like a living creature, is just like, it makes it all the more stronger, because he doesn't see it as like something he has to establish a relationship with or anything. He's just like, I could go to a pet store and buy a dog. Why can't I buy this thing?
And because he's an inventor, and there's a lot of fun gags centered around his terrible inventions.
Real quick, I do want to question the ethics of Mr. Wing keeping Gizmo in a box.
In a box. Well, okay. Well, yeah, I guess you can call it a box.
It's basically a box. He keeps Gizmo in a dark box.
Yeah.
Maybe he lets him out whenever customers aren't there or something.
Yeah, that's my headcanon. Yeah. Even though, like, well, no, in the second one, he's still in his cage. We'll sidestep that for now.
Maybe dial it back a little, Mr. Wing. Get off your high horse for a second. Yeah, you won't sell him, but you'll keep him caged forever. That's fine.
And but there comes the fateful point in the first act where Gizmo's upstairs with Billy, and because Billy's kind of coded as a loser. How old do you think Billy is? He's obviously out of high school.
I think he's early 20s.
So, early 20s.
Yeah, maybe a college dropout sort of thing.
Yeah,
because he's like a bank teller.
Yeah,
which is a bad job by any means, but it's definitely not like he's going to be successful or anything.
But he's just kind of coded as like a bit of a dork, a bit of a geek, because like the only friend that he has besides Kate, the love interest, is like a little 12-year-old boy.
Yeah,
Pete, played by Corey Feldman. So Pete's upstairs because he was delivering the Christmas tree to them, and he accidentally spills water on Gizmo and pops out a bunch of Mogwai. And when Billy tells his dad, "Hey, come check this out," the first thing his dad thinks is like, "We could sell this.
Yeah, we could just start selling these things.
We can market this. Think about it. The Peltzer pet. It could be like the next big thing because their last name is Peltzer." And so, yeah, there's definitely that really sardonic, sort of cynical commercialism around Christmas and just in general throughout the movie. Because Kingston Falls, it was shot on the Warner Brothers backlot, which is in a bunch of movies. And Joe Dante wanted to purposely make the movie kind of resemble older monster movies from the 50s black and white era and kind of have that sort of heightened artificiality to it, where it doesn't quite look like a real place.
Yeah, it's the same set as Back to the Future, isn't it?
To the Future. Yep, just covered in snow.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie, for as smirking as it is toward Christmas, it's absolutely slathered in Christmas aesthetic. Like the snow is pure white. It covers everything. It's got the frosted windows, the bright lights. Just it has a real great Christmas atmosphere to it.
Mm-hmm.
And God damn it, I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? No, I was supposed to be on the top of my game here.
Let me see if I can pull us in a different direction, and then we can circle back to it. Let's talk about some of the technical aspects of this movie.
Yeah, we could talk about the effects.
Yeah.
This will be fun for you. The effects were done by Chris Wallace, who you might remember that name from The Fly.
Oh, fuck.
He did the effects for The Fly. Did the effects for Gremlins. And,
he's skilled at his work.
Yep. This is one of those things where it's like, because the movie's been such a part of me for so long, like, I've always just accepted Gizmo and the Gremlins just as is. Like, yeah, they're there. They're great. Like, it's hard for me to, like, separate them and make them into special effects. But when I take that step back from my nostalgia and my love for the movie, like, they still hold up amazingly well.
Let me ask you a question. Are there multiple Gizmo, like, puppets? Like, animatronic? Yeah. I figured. Because there's, like, a vast array of different facial expressions and everything that he has throughout the movie. And I just could not see them using a single puppet for that.
Well, let me tell you. Chris Wallace is really funny about Gizmo. Because originally, Gizmo was supposed to go away after the first act because he would turn into Stripe.
Yeah.
But because he was being kept around for the whole movie, he had to come up with a bunch of different techniques and stuff for the effects.
Mm-hmm.
So there was remote control Gizmo, where, if it's in like a wide shot in Billy's backpack with his like head poking out or something, somebody's off camera like manipulating the head so you can kind of see it move in the backpack.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime Billy is really interacting with Gizmo in a scene in like a medium shot or something, there's hidden wires everywhere going up his butt. So if he's sitting on a counter, then there's somebody underneath the set, a bunch of people, puppeteers underneath the set, manipulating him to make him look like he's moving.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a real close up of just Gizmo, it's a far bigger puppet.
Oh, there's big Gizmo?
Yep, there's big Gizmo. Giant Gizmo head, giant Gizmo body, and all the props were embiggened. So like, say like there's a shot of him like getting jostled in the backpack. That's a giant Gizmo in a giant backpack with giant pencils and paper. Yeah, so like little bits of movie magic like that like only last a couple seconds on screen are everywhere in this movie.
Right.
And he also had a bunch of change-o faces. So you just mentioned his expressions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they couldn't do that with only a couple mechanisms. So they just had tearaway faces. Like if they wanted to make him look really pouty and sad,
oh god,
take the face off, put that one on. If they wanted to make him look scared, take the pouty one off, put the scared one on.
That's terrifying. I can't imagine what he would look like with his face torn off. Or I can, but I don't want to.
And believe it or not, the Gremlins weren't as complicated because their model is basically the same. They all pretty much look the same.
Yeah.
But they're still freaking amazing.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple quick moments where you can see like a rod in their arm that the puppeteer is moving or something like that. But those are few and far in between, and like you only notice it if you've seen the movie a million times, like I have.
Right.
Again, like. The sets were all raised like 3 or 4 feet, so all the puppeteers can be jammed under it to do what needed to be done. And in some of the bigger crowd scenes with the Gremlins, it's like, how the hell did they pull that off?
Yeah, because there's dozens of them.
Uh-huh. Think about the shots in the movie theater in the climax.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a whole movie theater full of Gremlins, and what that is different elements spliced together. So you have like your more articulate puppets in the forefront, and then lesser ones that are maybe just like hand puppets that you flap up and down in the midground and background, and they just shot those elements separately and put them together for shots like that.
There's some stop motion in here too, isn't there?
There is some stop motion.
Yeah, I was thinking about the scene where like they're first coming into town in the horde, like after Strop jumps in the pool at the YMCA, because like you can just see them all start coming out of the fog, and that definitely looked like stop motion.
Yep, it's stop motion. You can tell it's stop motion. You can always tell when something's stop motion. But I love stop motion, so it's a charming shot. I love it anyway.
Yeah.
A funny anecdote about that: when they were filming that in the studio,
yeah,
you know how painstaking stop motion is.
Oh yeah.
One of the lights blew, and then like the whole crew was just despondent. They were just like, "Oh my god, we have to start it all over again." And Joe Dante's like, "No. Let's think about this here. Okay, a light blew, so we'll add a sound into the soundtrack in the movie to make it just sound like a gremlin threw a rock at a streetlight or something." And that's what they did. When you see that scene, you hear like a light pop, and that's what it is. That's the sound. That and you see kind of like a bit of the screen kind of go a little darker because that light popped.
Yeah.
So that was just like one of those happy accident movie fixes, that's just
right
fortuitous. What else about the effects can we talk about? Well, do you think the effects hold up?
Absolutely. I'm a sucker for practical effects done well, because as much as I love CGI and the places that it's allowed us to go, it can get very like tedious nowadays to go into any film and be like, well, I know that this is just going to be a CGI slog fest where everything is green screen. So seeing all of these animatronic puppets and everything just sort of like flailing about and doing things, they have, even though you can tell they're not real, they're not real gremlins, they're not real things, there's just so much character to them. Like, you can feel the craftsmanship put into each of them and each shot with them. I think my favorite is probably the bar scene where we just go through like all of these different gremlins doing all this wacky shit. And I just love seeing like all of this work going into making something material that's actually there and then filming it in a way that's trying to make it not only seem there but like alive. So, yeah, I think absolutely the effects still hold up.
You mentioned the bar scene, which is like the centerpiece of the movie.
Yeah.
And even today, like, I'm still noticing little details. Little things in the background. Like a facial expression one of the gremlins might be making, or there's just some little activity happening. Like, there's so much visual chaos in that scene, but it's never like confusing or anything like that.
There's so many different shots. There's like one of them starts break dancing at one point. There's another point where like soft jazz starts playing, and like one of them sitting there all like serious and everything, and then another one comes up next to him like playing with hand puppets or something, trying to annoy him, and he shoots him in the head. And then there's like Strop playing cards with the others, and then there's a gremlin in drag, which I guess it's drag because we did talk about how earlier they're monogender, but like it like leans over to him and tells him that the other one's cheating, and he shoots him.
Yep. And that's just another element to the personality of the movie, because like in a lesser movie they would just be vicious monsters that you have to find a way to destroy at the end.
Yeah.
But like, and I think taking like the more overt aspects of like they eat people away from the story,
yeah,
that automatically imbues them with more personality.
Because now they're less monstrous and more troublemaker.
Yeah, they're murderous, but they're not specifically like out for blood.
They're not exclusively murderous.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
They're just imps. They just want to have a good time and cause as much chaos as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And that's what gives it such a charm, because that allows for them to have so much character. Like, the more they put on clothes, like, the more funny they become. Like, it's almost like they're mocking people, like they're mocking humanity, because they totally get off on taunting people. The part with Mrs. Deagle's death, which is iconic.
Mm-hmm. One of the best deaths, if not the best.
So fucking good. It's the evil, crazy, over-the-top villain lady of the movie, and she's the cat lady, and she has I don't even know what you call them technically, but like an automatic chair that...
Yeah, one of those chair ramps that goes up the stairs for you.
Yeah, it's on a track and it goes up the stairs.
Yeah.
She's feeding her cats and she hears Christmas carolers, and because she's such like a crazy Scrooge type character, you know, she's like, Christmas carolers. I hate Christmas carolers. She grabs a pitcher of water, which you're like, because, you know, the movie's kicked in the high gear, and you're like, oh no, don't do that. And she opens the door and she storms out. She's like, I warned you, brats. And then she sees the gremlins just like mock caroling, just in like earmuffs and scarves and hats. She's like, oh god, they've come for me. Like, she's saying they've come for me. Like,
keep saying that. Like she's been expecting the devil to take her this whole time.
Like demons are just like she's lived a life of evil and it's finally caught up to her. And there was a gremlin inside the house that was tinkering with the chair while she was outside. She sits in it, she hits the button, and it just launches her up the house and out the window like a rocket into the street. What I aside from the hilarious dark visual gag of her being launched out of the window like that, is I love how it's edited. Mm-hmm. Like, there are like 3 or 4 separate cuts, like close up on her face as she's whipping up the stairs, and it's like, how long is this staircase?
Yeah,
you know,
it feels like a big house.
If he lands in front of the cops who are out on patrol, they don't know what the fuck is going on. Mm-hmm. And they're like, my god, that was Mrs. Deagle. And then to keep the chaos going, a Santa Claus busts out of a house and he's covered in gremlins. And they're just like attacking him, and he falls in front of the cop car, and one of the gremlins is looking in the window. He's like, ho, ho, ho. So like, their evil mischievousness is just endlessly entertaining, because it's like you always bring up with monster movies. Like, I wish monsters had a different goal than to like kill or eat or something like that.
Yeah,
and
it's just
this
boring.
is that movie. This is that movie.
This is the movie where, they're just tricksters. They're here to cause trouble and have fun, and that makes them so much more, like, not only, like, fun to recognize in their personalities and everything, but it also makes them much more... I'm much less likely to start questioning, like, why the fuck is this thing just killing everybody for the, like... Yeah, of course it wants to kill everybody. It's this little imp trickster that likes messing with people.
Yeah, that brings back to the bar scene, because what's funny about that is that they filmed all the principal photography with like most of the actors, but then they came back months later to focus strictly on just gremlin stuff. So that bar scene was filmed months after principal photography was wrapped, just so they can film all the gremlin stuff, and it was apparently just hell on earth to get all of the effects to work and to set up all the shots and the gags, and you can see all the detail in the bar. Like, it's absolutely covered in just popcorn and trash and beer and glass, and it's almost like you can smell it.
Yeah,
which is appropriate, because they've said, like, my god, that set smelled so terrible. By the end of that shoot, it was just like the popcorn mixed with the beer and the lights. It was the most sickly sweet smell you've ever smelled in your life.
Yeah.
And Kate, the love interest, she's there because she works at that bar. But they're not trying to kill her, because they need her to serve beer and popcorn and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a pervert gremlin that flashes her. He's got like a coat on and sunglasses.
Which is great, because they don't have genitals.
Exactly. And it's funny, because like you think like these are like humanistic traits. Like, where are they picking this up on from?
Right.
Which leads, it goes back to like they're mocking humanity. Like, because I've interpreted them as sort of like a punishment for humanity's hubris and inattentive nature to the natural order of things, basically. Like, I don't want to call them a divine punishment, but they're just like a sort of like a mystical, quasi-magical, just like, comeuppance or, retribution. Like, you weren't on the ball, you didn't pay attention, you fucked up, and, here we are. Now you got to deal with us. Because aside from the father, Rand, thinking he can merchandise them, there's also the high school science teacher who just wants to experiment on them because he just finds them curious,
Yeah.
So, like, aside from Billy, who loves Gizmo and is just a good-natured kid, like, everybody else in the movie, as we said before, just kind of an asshole, kind of off-putting, kind of just, you know?
Yeah.
And that's totally by design.
I will say that the teacher, I thought he was worse in previous viewings. In this most recent viewing, he doesn't really do anything bad, per se. The worst thing he does is draw some blood from the gremlin, from the Mogwai to, like, take some tests. But he's never, like, aggressively mean-spirited towards the thing. He's just kind of, like, cold towards it in sort of, like, an academic, scientific way. Like, he keeps it in a cage and everything. Which is, like, still a problematic and, like, still part of the themes being addressed here. But, like, he's never, like, aggressively mean towards these things.
And that's what makes it work so well, is like you have these people that aren't necessarily like bad people, but there's just the way they're played and the way they're executed. There's just something a little unapproachable about a lot of them, you know? The science teacher, he's just kind of like cold and academic, and you're just kind of, you can tell he doesn't have any sort of interest in it aside from the academic. You know, Mrs. Deagle obviously is overtly terrible. And Mr. Futterman, even though he's xenophobic, he's not hateable, and that could be, you know, down to just the actor Dick Miller being just good in anything he's in.
Yeah.
But I mean, he gets his comeuppance. You know, he's a drunk and he's a xenophobe.
I will say it's unfortunate, and this is just another symptom of 80s films in general, that the only black character in this film is the high school teacher who gets murdered.
Yeah. I mean, again, it could have been worse. He was supposed to have a face full of syringes instead of just a butt with one syringe. So
again, chalk it up to the problematic nature of 80s films, but like, yeah, that's a much smaller one than the actual like Asian Orientalism and mysticism in the beginning of the film.
I remembered what I wanted to say when I was talking about how Christmassy the movie looks and is designed. The beauty of the Christmas setting is juxtaposed by the cynicism of it, because although we're surrounded by all this like, it's not really bucolic, but this like picture postcard perfect Christmas looking town, everybody in it is just kind of a dick, you know, like they ruin it, you know, they ruin the meaning of Christmas by, you know, being inattentive or cold or mean or xenophobic, or just like the little interaction during the opening movie in the Christmas tree yard between like the cop and the Christmas tree salesman, like, you know, he's just trying to bilk the Christmas tree guy into giving him a free tree for the Christmas station.
Yeah.
And the Christmas tree guy has Pete, the little kid, dress up as a Christmas tree just, you know, for the for the marketing of the lot. So, like, these are small details, and it's like, it's stuff you might not think about the first, second, or 10th time you see the movie, but it all adds to, like, the undercurrent of kind of taking a shit on commercialism and how people can like get away from what the holiday is supposed to be about.
Yeah. And that leads me into a point I wanted to talk about, the backstory for Kate and why she hates Christmas.
There's so many infamous moments in this movie. No wonder it stood the test of time.
I wonder if this scene was meant to be tragic, or if it was meant to be hilarious, or if
it was meant to be darkly comic.
Okay, but like how much dark and how much comic? Because like it's played kind of straight in this film. Like in the second Gremlins movie, they kind of make fun of it. They have like a whole scene where she starts giving a backstory, and he's just like, okay, we don't have time for this. But in this one, it's kind of played straight. There's even a shot where like Gizmo is like shocked at what she's talking about.
Like, whoa, what the fuck?
But like, it's so goddamn funny and out of left field. Just so Kate, the love interest, throughout the movie, she's talking about how she hates Christmas. She doesn't celebrate it or anything, and we finally find out why after the Gremlins show up and start like causing chaos in the town. They're like in an abandoned building, hiding out for a moment. And she says, this is just one more reason for me to hate Christmas. And she then just spills her guts to Billy about how her father, when she was a child, tried to dress up as Santa Claus and come down the chimney, but broke his neck and died in the chimney. And then they thought he was missing for weeks, and they couldn't find him until they noticed the smell coming from the chimney, and they had to get the fire department to dig his dead corpse out of the chimney in like the Santa costume. and that's why she hates Christmas. And it comes from nowhere, and it's so hilariously awkward. It's just like, why the fuck would you bring this up right now for no reason?
Everybody has had that like reaction to the scene for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's like, it's like darkly funny and it's fucked up, but like it just like comes out of nowhere, and it's like, what?
It's one of these moments where I can't tell if I'm laughing at the film or with it, because I don't know what they meant to do there. It's like one of those, like, I can't tell if I'm supposed to be endeared to this character now, or if I'm supposed to be laughing at the sheer absurdity of this scene.
I think you're supposed to be both, because Kate is the only character in the movie that's really humanized aside from like Billy, because like he's kind of just like the naive, like, oh, I love Christmas, it's fun, you open presents with your family and da 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 da, and she's just kind of like, it's not my thing. And that's the payoff. That monologue about her father is the payoff, and it's sort of meant to drive home the sort of like anti-Christmas narrative of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And if you knew Joe Dante's sensibilities more, that's his sense of humor. He has a very jaded, sort of like smirking, dark humor about him that he injects in all of his movies. And they had to fight to keep that scene in, believe it or not.
Really?
I'm sure you can probably believe it, considering everybody's reaction to it like that. But yeah, the suits, they're like, this is kind of a buzzkill. It kind of stops the movie a little bit. But they're like, no, like, it's staying in. So, and they won that battle. That's a good segue into the marketing. It's funny because I mentioned Joe Dante wanted it to be a bit of a commentary on commercialism.
Yeah.
And I was listening to the commentary on the Blu-ray in prep for this just to get some tidbits that I might want to mention, and this is one of them. It's the scene where you first see Gizmo as Billy's opening up the box, and he's like, okay, this is the point where you start hearing rumblings about merchandise from the suits. And just the way he tells the story is really funny. He's like, at that point, like, I hadn't heard any talk. Somebody really mentioned, marketing and merchandise for the movie. But, we're showing the dailies of this scene, and like all of a sudden I just hear the conversation like behind me, like, merchandise, marketing. So it's funny how he makes this movie and he's injecting commentary on commercialism into it, and it turns into a big commercial thing because the special effects people and the director did their jobs well.
Yeah. They made Gizmo too cute. They made Gizmo too cute to not merchandise.
And it's kind of crazy that like the Gremlins merchandise really never, like, because it came out in '84 and like it had a huge wave of merchandising, plushies, cereal, vinyl figures, lunch boxes, stickers, all kinds of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And like even to this day, as you know, you've seen my basement, Gremlins merchandise is everywhere. Like it's one of the most marketed and visible like 80s properties still out there.
Yeah, you can still like every Christmas you can find like Gremlins like little figurines and stuff to purchase.
And as much as I love the anti-commercialism commentary, I'm engaged in the actual commercialization of the movie because I have not the most impressive Gremlins collection, because I've seen a far better Gremlins collection, but
you got some shit.
About a third of my basement is.
You've got a life-sized Gremlin, which is pretty impressive.
I have a life-sized Gremlins Puppet from Trick or Treat Studios that is in a handmade plexiglass case. So yeah, you could say I'm a little obsessed.
You don't have a Jaws you don't have a full shark in a glass case anywhere.
I mean, I honestly would, if it wouldn't torment me with nightmares.
You come downstairs and you're just like, fucking shit-ass dick.
Because as much as I love Jaws, sharks terrify the fuck out of me, and Gremlins don't. So, take that for what it's worth. I could just keep beating the commercialism horse. Appropriate that the final showdown between Stripe and Billy is in a department store. The bastion of commercialism during the holiday. You know, hit up the department store, buy everything you can, and it just ends with like the store being shot up, torn up, because the final battle between Billy and Stripe is pretty brutal and played straight.
It's pretty brutal, but Billy just gets his ass kicked kind of the whole time. He's not really an action hero sort of thing.
No, he's not at all. And that's what makes him likable and endearing, because like he's not the most like deep and fleshed out character. He's played by Zach Galligan. I didn't specify that. I met him at a convention a couple years ago. Woo, woo, woo. Nice guy. But yeah, like in a lesser movie, like he would be the kind of guy that steps up and kind of becomes a badass and takes out the monster or the threat. But no, he tries. I'll give him that. He really tries. But he gets his ass kicked by one gremlin the whole movie. He gets shot in the shoulder with a crossbow.
You want to know who the fucking action hero in this movie is, though?
Gizmo.
No. I mean, kind of, but the real action hero in this movie is Billy's mom, Lynn.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, because the first time that the Mogwai multiply, there's like Gizmo, and then like 5 of them pop out of him. Like, Billy's mom kills 3 of them on her own.
Yeah, she's fucking badass.
She throws one into a blender and it gets eviscerated and goes like all over the kitchen. She throws another one into a microwave and microwaves it and it explodes in there. And then like there's
one to the counter with a knife.
Yeah, she does one to the counter. Like she almost ended this threat before it even began.
Yeah. Like if the one wasn't hiding in the Christmas tree and ambushed her, she probably could have taken them all out.
And it's hilarious because prior to that, she was just sort of this unassuming mother figure who's like, she's nice and everything, and she kind of puts up with her husband's eccentric inventor nature, and she tries to be supportive and everything. There's nothing really too much, unique or special to her. And then like the gremlins show up and she just fucking starts slaying these little shits. She's like, I am not having this in my house.
Yeah, it's one of the it's one of those stand up and cheer moments in movies. As funny as the movie is, there's genuine tension and genuine moments of horror in it, and the whole house scene with her alone is one of those moments. It's got real suspense in it. It's kind of scary because they're fucking with her. They're turning on music and she has to go downstairs and turn off the music, and you see footprints in the dust and shadows on the wall, and they're throwing things at her from off screen, and it's a good build up to the first big gremlin reveal. You see a glimpse of one at the school that hatched, screech at Billy and then run away, but you only see it for a brief second. And when she goes around that corner into the kitchen and the camera pans back to reveal the gremlin in full that's eating a gingerbread guy, it's such a cool shot. Every time I see the movie, that shot impresses me because I kind of don't know how they did it because the movement is so fluid. It's just sitting there. It looks as real as these things can look in the movie. Like the way it's moving, the way it's breathing, the way it's chewing the cookie. Like what I think they did, and it hears her and there's a little musical sting and its ear pops up and it turns around. I think what they did is, I get the terms mixed up. There's method called undercranking and overcranking, which you do with the camera to make something look faster and more fluid, or slow something down. And I think to make it look more faster and fluid, you undercrank. I could be wrong on that. Okay. I think that's what they did to make the gremlins moving in that scene look so fluid, with the ear perking up and it turning around and snarling and stuff like that. Yeah, I love that shot. It's a great shot. And to steal, because I never made this connection, because I like to think of myself as a genius film connoisseur who can understand symbolism and visual language, and I was watching a video essay on the movie, and on YouTube, where I buy into this canon where it's just it eating the head off the cookie, the gingerbread man. It's supposed to be sort of just a symbolic sort of reference to the fact that gremlins indeed do eat people. You're just not going to explicitly see it, but it munching on the head of a gingerbread man is supposed to kind of, what's the word? Shit. Why do I always blank when I'm trying to make a good point?
I get what you're saying, though. It's they couldn't actually show them eating people, so this is the closest thing that we'll get to see.
Yeah, but what's the term I'm thinking of when something is, subliminal kind of messaging is what I was saying. Not my point. Can't remember the YouTube video I saw was a while ago, but they made that point. I'm stealing it wholesale. Sorry, I can't credit you, whoever you are, but just know that my credit is out there in the ether. Do you have a favorite sort of gremlin moment in the movie?
Let's see. I really like the bar scene in particular. If I had to point to a specific point in the bar scene, I think it's probably like whenever the one is listening to like jazz music and trying to act all serious or something, and then the other one just comes up next to it and starts bothering it with like puppets and stuff, and then he fucking just shoots him in the head.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts too.
I think that might be my favorite gremlin moment.
It's just one of those fun little weird ass visual gags. And in the commentary during the bar scene, Joe Dante, he's like, "Yeah, now it's just like a weird Muppet movie."
It really is. It's like we're gonna get a bunch of these shots that don't really contribute to the like actual story happening, but god damn it adds so much charm and character to these things.
It's the shot of the one in like the bowler hat, like drinking and smoking alone. It's an homage to Humphrey Bogart, the classic actor from the 30s and 40s, and it's the one guy just coming up here, he's just like trying to bug the shit out of this one gremlin, and he had the brooding film noir gremlin just has a mallet for no reason and bonks him on the head.
Yeah,
and it's just like, where do they get all this shit? Like, where do the gremlins physically? Where do they get the bowler hat? Where do they get the women's clothing? Where do they get the mallet?
Yeah,
it's this cartoon logic.
Yeah,
that somehow just works because it's so well executed.
I was gonna say there is like a very cartoon logic to this whole movie because like you have the carolers who are out there when we get to Mrs. Deagle's death. And they've got, like, perfectly sized scarves and, like, caroling books and everything.
It's not like human-appropriate sized clothing. No, it's gremlin-sized clothing.
Gremlin-sized. It's like, where did they get this? Did they make this before coming here? Like, what's going on?
And the cartoon logic, again, completely purposeful because we talked about Chuck Jones in our Space Jam review, and Chuck Jones has a cameo in the movie. In the beginning, in the bar scene, and when Billy's sketching that like dragon illustration of Mrs. Deagle, the guy who says, "The old bat never looked better. You're gonna go far."
That's Chuck Jones? Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. There was apparently like a through line that Joe Dante wanted to do where he wanted to emphasize Billy's artistic nature more with his illustrations and comic books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where his wardrobe was supposed to reflect a superhero character he had been drawing up until that point. But like through like the rewrites of the script, like that got dropped and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I mean they kind of pay off his artistic side in the sequel. And and they pay off the cartoon logic nature in the sequel in spades.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because if the first one has cartoon logic, then the second one is a live action cartoon from beginning to end. We haven't really talked about Gizmo as a character yet.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. Like, Gizmo's adorable, of course, but like the Gremlins and the Mogwai have clear intelligence and personalities and everything. It kind of gets lost a bit with the Gremlins just because there's so many of them, and you can kind of see that most of them are just set up as cutaway gags. But let's talk about actually like Gizmo's personality, because he has one.
He does, yep. Well, I mean, yeah, he's fucking adorable. And he has his little song that he sings, that he hums. And he's almost kind of like Billy, you know? He likes reading comics, he likes watching TV. He has a bit of a curious nature to him. I love the shot when he first gets water spilled on him. And, like, you know that he knows that, oh, shit, it's happening again. Like, this isn't his first rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
There's this great shot, it's a great little moment of puppeteering where he just has this sad look on his face, and he hitches this big sigh. He's just like, and he's just shaking his head. Like, oh, no, like, not again. there's another shot where all the little Mogwai are playing a little video game, and Gizmo's just kind of off to his side playing a little trumpet toy, and they spit on him, and he's just like, ah.
He looks so shocked and offended.
It's just they play it up more, they pay it off more in the second one, but it's like there's like this innate sort of understanding between Gizmo the Mogwai and then later the Gremlins, like, we don't like you, you don't like us, so we're gonna fuck with you, you know? Like, when they hatch, he's cowering in a little helmet in the room, and they're just basically torturing him, you know? They're playing darts with him.
Gizmo seems to be the only member of his species that's, like, a good person.
Yeah, which I've always tried to come up with my own headcanon of, like, why that is. And I can never come up with anything that personally satisfies me.
I talked about how they're, like, possibly a monogender species that reproduce through asexual reproduction. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe this whole, like... Maybe they can actually regularly reproduce and everything, but, like, the use of water is sort of, like, a creation of their negative aspects or something. I don't know, but, like, it's weird that the only good Mogwai we ever see is Gizmo, and every other one is, like, a monster.
And in the novelization, I like this as a bit of, like, franchise lore, but not as, like, actual lore. They're aliens.
Really?
Yeah, there's a prologue in the novelization that explains that as an alien scientist created the Mogwai to be a perfect pet, and, like, it went wrong, and that's what it is. I hate that and love it at the same time. I love it because it's such, like, a weird little hidden nugget of, like, Gremlins info, but I hate it because that's such an easy out, you know?
I also don't know if that makes the Orientalism better or worse.
Yeah. And it takes away the ambiguity and fun of the Gremlins by just making them space aliens, you know? So I like to think that at some point in history, I kind of like to keep the like, experiment created aspect, but, like, as sort of like a test. Like, Gizmo or some other Mogwai was, like, created for some purpose to, like, this. I'm going on a really weird nerdy tangent here.
Go for it. This is your favorite movie.
At one point, I was trying to write of Gremlins 3, and it wasn't just a Gremlins 3. Oh god, this is so embarrassing.
Do it.
It was a Gremlins and Indiana Jones crossover.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Where Indy is in China exploring ancient ruins and stuff like that, and he comes across information about the Mogwai. He doesn't know what they are, of course, but, like, I can't remember the specifics, and, like, it's not airtight, but like, there was, like, a young emperor at some point who was, like, brash and irresponsible and a bad guy, and, like, it's kind of embarrassing because I think I accidentally, like, kind of went into Orientalism myself without knowing it, because this was years ago. So I wasn't thinking in culturally sensitive terms when I was writing this, just as a disclaimer. But, like, the emperor's, like, Merlin figure, the wizard figure, in collusion with his father, like, we need to teach him responsibility. We need to teach him that he can't be, you know, like this. Like, how are we going to do it? You know? And they create Gizmo as sort of like a companion and a test for him. And that's the origin. And, like, that was, like, the first Gremlins outbreak, is him not heeding the rules of the Mogwai.
Alright, I know that maybe, possibly, at best, 2 people listen to this podcast. But if we get 100 likes, I will force Tyler to write this goddamn fanfiction of Gremlins 3, because I want to know how it ends. I want to know how this story goes.
Well, I'm glad that you found it interesting enough to want to see how it develops. I might be beaten to the punch, because at some point next year, the animated series, Secret of the Mogwai, is supposed to come out.
And they stole your idea.
I don't know if they stole my idea. I know it takes place in the past with a young Mr. Wing and Gizmo. And it takes place in China, and the showrunner and head writer is Chinese, which is cool.
Who owns Gremlins? What production studio?
Warner Brothers, so it's going to be on HBO Max.
Okay, cool.
And I think they also announced that it was going to air on Cartoon Network as well.
Neat.
And, like, I'm just like, it's real, like, it's made, it's coming out, but we have had nothing, like, as far as, like, promotion is concerned. Like, we've had one still and one teaser poster.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you've announced this, like, 2.5 years ago. Give me something. Please. Like, all I've wanted is another installment in the Gremlins franchise, and you're finally doing it, and you're not giving me the information fast enough. Like, I could die. I could die before this comes out. Just give it to me. Just give me a trailer. Give me something. God.
Give me something to cling on to this pathetic life for, so that I can stick around for the next Gremlins.
And if when it finally comes out and it's successful, like I have a feeling in my bones that like it's sort of like the test run to launch Gremlins 3 into production finally, because it's been in production hell for years.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't believe we live in a world where like every single franchise or IP that has a modicum, a smidgen of like a fan base or like recognizability in the public eye has been rebooted, but Gremlins hasn't yet. Like, get on the ball. Like Critters. I've showed you Critters. Critters is a Gremlins ripoff, although the creators say it's not a ripoff. But like that had 2 separate reboots that had nothing to do with each other within a year.
Wow.
Recently. And you're telling me I can't get a Gremlins 3, but Critters can get 2 separate, like, unrelated reboots in a year? Come on, people. Give me what I want. Ugh. Anyway, I said we talked, and I said this is going to be the one where I talk the most, and I guess it's true, because I don't think I've talked the most on the pod, like, at all this much up to this point.
This is your favorite film. I absolutely understand. I'm just happy to be along for the ride. I want to ask you this question. This is going to get personal, because I like this movie. I do. Mm-hmm. I do. Mm-hmm. I do not have this sort of adoration for this movie that you have. This is your favorite film, tied with Jaws, your favorite film, and you're a big movie buff. So I want you to tell me, like, quick summary, like, what is it about this film that puts it above everything else? Because comedy horror is not a small genre. Like, people have been mixing comedy horror together for a long time, and even if you broke that apart into comedy and horror, there's tons of movies in these genres. What makes this movie the one that stands out for you, aside from just the nostalgia of, oh, it's the one that's been around the longest in my life?
Honestly, I've thought about it, and I can't tell you other than like nostalgia. And like, I as big of a fanboy as I am of a lot of things, and this is like the movie that makes me feel like the warmest, gooeyest inside, you know, like a warm chocolate chip cookie just out of the oven.
Mm-hmm.
I can still take myself away from it and, you know, recognize flaws in it. Like, for instance, the Orientalism we were talking about, completely acknowledge that, you know. There's also a dropped character. It's not a perfect movie. Gerald, played by Judge Reinhold, is set up as like an antagonist for Billy in the beginning.
Oh yeah, and then you never see him again.
And he disappears. There's a deleted scene where he's in the bank with them before Kate gives her Santa speech. The Gremlins like attacked him and locked him in the vault, and he's just kind of like crazed and like broken. He's just kind of like. So they did pay him off, but like it's not in the official cut of the movie. So yeah, you know, there's little things you can nitpick, but with me, I'm not the kind of guy that, like, if I love something and I love it to the point where like it's considered like one of my favorites, issues it might have just don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fine. But as far as like answering your question more completely, honestly, I don't have a good one for you. It's just, I saw it as a kid. It struck me then, and it's just always been with me. Just everything about it, like how it's made, the way it looks, its sense of humor, its sense of playfulness. It's just, it's like everything that I love about movies. It's like pitched perfectly with like my sensibilities. Is the only thing I can explain. Like I appreciate the craft and of the effects. I appreciate that it does have deeper meaning and themes that you can look for if you so choose. And I appreciate that even though it's cynical and violent and dark, it's also very sweet, and it knows when to be sincere. Because when Mr. Wing shows up at the end at Billy's house and takes Gizmo back, and Gizmo comes out and he says, "Bye, Bill." Every time I'm just like, no. I have no academically like written out explanation as to why this movie. It just is this movie.
It's just fascinating to me because at the beginning you asked me if I had a thing like this, and I said Pokemon, and I love Pokemon. And a part of the reason that Pokemon is still around is in like my like scope is because it's not just a video game series or just an anime series or whatever. It's like this whole massive multimedia franchise that, like, even if I get tired of the games or the anime or whatever, I haven't watched the anime in forever, and I play the games still pretty regularly, but I got problems with them. It's like, even if I get tired of one aspect of Pokemon, I can always pick up another aspect of Pokemon. But Gremlins doesn't have that for you. It's not this huge multimedia franchise. It's a couple of films and then like a novelization and then like the merchandising, yeah, but not like...
It's got some video games, but they're all old and most of them are shitty.
Yeah, it's not this huge franchise like Pokemon is, though. But like you, I think, have a much more deeper adoration for Gremlins than I do for Pokemon, because like I don't see Pokemon as like something sacred almost to like, you know, I wouldn't even dare to criticize it in the way that you kind of feel towards Gremlins. Like you like you said, you can point out the flaws, but they don't really matter to you. For me, it's more like, yeah, I can totally look at Pokemon and see the flaws and get mad about it, and it does matter for me. I want to see this franchise do better. It's just interesting, the difference here, because I have a lot of stuff from my childhood that I still hold dear and dear to my heart, but I also have a lot of stuff in my adulthood that I would consider like in my favorites list. I don't look back at like the games or the movies or the shows in my childhood and think those were the absolute best, those are the peak. I look at them and I think I loved those as a kid and I still love them now, but I can also acknowledge that like there's a lot of media nowadays that matches or even exceeds those.
Yeah. We all have our own sort of journey as far as like our relationship with childhood franchises and films and shows and stuff like that, and how we relate to media as we age and stuff like that. Star Wars, for instance, like we talked about, we made a whole episode about the Star Wars fandom.
Yeah.
Like so many people just assume that like any new Star Wars thing that comes out should make them feel like how they felt when they saw A New Hope when they were 8 years old. Like, that's not going to happen, you know? Like, so you just have to set your expectations, you know, to a realistic level. And with Gremlins, like, there's not that because there's only been the two films, you know?
Yeah.
And I only have to enjoy them on their own terms and if I feel they hold up or not. And there are tons of things I loved as a kid that I've gone to later and just like, oop, nope, the magic is gone. Like, that happens with all kinds of things. And it's just, it never happened with Gremlins 1 or 2 because I love Gremlins 1 and 2 pretty much equally. Even though I say Gremlins and Jaws are my two favorite films, really it's Gremlins 1 and 2 and Jaws. It's just like, and you see it, I don't know if you see it a lot, but you see it a lot online in film discourse where like people have like this like ego and like snooty attitude about like opinions and like nostalgia.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Like, oh, you shouldn't be as nostalgic as you are. Or you shouldn't enjoy this thing as much as you do. Like, you're not being objective enough. You're not being critical enough. It's like,
objectivity's bullshit.
Who cares? Who cares if somebody's favorite movie at 35 was their favorite movie at 5? you know?
Right.
So good that somebody is able to, like, still derive, you know, just unpretentious enjoyment from that thing for so long,
God, I wish I could remember this comic artist's name, but like I sent you a comic a few days ago that conversation is reminding me of, where it's like a mouse caught in a mousetrap, not like an actual mousetrap, but like one of those little have a heart cages, and the human's like, "Ha, stupid mouse, you fell for the cheese," and the mouse just turns to them and says, "Yes, I love cheese. I love cheese so much I'm willing to die for it. Are you willing to die for what you love? Have you ever loved anything as much as I have?" And the human's just like, "No," and starts crying and lets them out of the cage. Like, yeah, like that sort of love for something is beautiful. Like, if you love something your entire life and that love never fades, that's a beautiful thing to experience. You shouldn't be like mocked or criticized for that just because somebody doesn't like it the same way you do. Like, if you can hold on to that passion for something your entire life, that's an amazing thing.
And like, just don't be a dick about it, Like, Unfortunately, too many people get personal about, their nostalgia and the things they love. Like, if you told me you didn't really like Gremlins, like, I'd give you like shit about it. Like, I can't believe you have no taste. Like, how could you? You're my best bud and you can't even like my favorite movie. But like, I wouldn't be genuinely upset that you don't like Gremlins.
It wouldn't end our friendship.
No, like, and I could totally get how somebody could not like this movie because its tone is offbeat. It's mean-spirited in a way that I think can blindside people if they're not, aware. Fun story. A couple years ago, in the before times, they screened this in Knoxville, and my puppet was fresh, my full-size puppet, and I went with Erica, and there wasn't too many people in the theater, which was fine. It should have been a packed house, but it was fine. And like, there's a kid a couple rows behind us, and he was well behaved and everything like that, but leaving, I heard this gem of a conversation that I absolutely just made my heart leap through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "Yeah, Dad," like, the dad was like, "So what'd you think?" And he's like, "At first I didn't like it. It was kind of boring, but then, like, when all the gremlins come out, like, it was amazing." Mm-hmm. And like, he said it just like that. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And he couldn't have been more than 9 or 10. And I'm like, yes, another fan from a new generation. Like, and I felt kind of silly having the puppet with me in broad daylight, and like there was only like 20 people in the theater, but like, still people stopped me and like, "Oh, awesome, cool, where'd you get that? That's amazing." So it was a fun little time.
It's not as bad as going to a Sonic movie dressed as Mario.
No, which was
the last film I saw in theaters before the pandemic hit was Sonic the Hedgehog on Valentine's Day while I was dressed as Mario.
Dude, and you were on cloud fucking night. Like, if anybody listening to this is thinking like, "God, this guy Tyler's just talking a fucking lot about Gremlins," Jesus, like, you don't know what Isaac was like in Olive Garden, dressed as Mario, literally talking at us the whole time about Sonic lore for like an hour, just going.
I wish we had recorded that. We could have just recorded that and just posted it. Just the Isaac rant explaining the 3D Sonic games lore. It's just, oh my god.
Like, you just kept going, and even Richard was like, "Isaac, man, like, slow to take a chill pill."
Oh, I was riled up. Sonic, I would say, is very near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons, and it's definitely a franchise that I can look at and be like, "Yeah, that shit's fucked." It's one of those that, like, the problems do matter, and I don't really play many of the newer games, but just, like, I'm never not going to have a deep, deep passion for Sonic just because of how weird and, like, connected to my childhood that game franchise was.
Oh man, the Sonic fandom and franchise is an enigma that just I find fascinating, but I'm too afraid to to dive into other than listening to you rant about it dressed up as Mario in Olive Garden.
It is a beautiful absurdity, I would say. The Sonic entire franchise fandom, everything about Sonic is just... I can't even put it into words. I'm not going down this train, though, because we're talking about Gremlins. You got any last...
We can get there.
We'll get to it. We'll talk about the Sonic movie at some... Hell, maybe for Valentine's Day we'll talk about the Sonic movie.
Sonic 2 is coming out next year at some point. I can't remember the specific release date, but it's coming.
Isn't it?
It's coming. Yep.
Idris Elba's going to be Knuckles. That'll be crazy.
I can't wait to see what he's going to do with his sultry, beautiful voice. Voicing Knuckles the Untitled.
Are you kidding me? Yeah.
You kidding us? Sorry. You cosplayed as the voice of Stripe, and you're probably confused at that statement. Frank Welker is the voice of Stripe, and a lot of the Gremlins in the movie. Frank Welker has lent his voice talents to pretty much everything you can think of.
Yeah.
Fred from Scooby-Doo. Yep.
We did our Scooby-Doo group cosplay. That was awesome.
Frank Welker is Megatron. It's like he's been in so much shit. Like it's impossible to like.
Who's Gizmo? I remember seeing Gizmo and being like, "That's
Howie
Gizmo?"
Mandel.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and being like, "Howie Mandel is Gizmo?"
Literally everybody who learns that, like, if you know who Howie Mandel is and you've seen Gremlins and like you didn't know, like people are like, Howie Mandel? What? And Zach Galligan, who played Billy in the movies, like, you know, it's so weird that like I've never met Howie Mandel in my life. It's funny that like this is his most famous movie and like he's known for it and he talks about it and is asked about it all the time and Gizmo and all that and he's never met Howie Mandel. I'm trying to look up Frank Welker's credits here because it's insane.
I'm sure there's too many to count.
And like I'll be watching something just like randomly and like there'll be like a voice part or like a sound effect and it'll sound just like a fucking gremlin. And I'm like, oh, there's Frank Welker. You know?
Yeah.
He's in the Animaniacs, Scooby-Doo, just... I think his credits are in the thousands, really. If IMDb would freaking load, I could just drop some basic knowledge.
You might as well not even try because it's such an extensive resume that it's like... It's like when we talked about James Baxter in the Klaus review. It's like, why would I even point at a specific James Baxter animation? You know, it's like the dude's a legend. He needs no introduction.
Aside from Megatron, Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget is another big one from the 80s that he was in.
Yeah.
Hey God, yeah. Actor credits 869. Nice.
Do we have... Are we at final thoughts for Gremlins, or have you got a lot more that you want to go through? Because I've kind of got
the thing, like...
I know it's one of those that you could talk about all night, but also it's like, it's so near and dear that it's kind of hard to figure out where to go next.
It really is. I feel like I wanted to try and wax more intelligently about it than I have, but like, I don't want to jerk myself off. I think I pretty much basically touched on, I think, some of the deeper themes of the movie that I wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, what about you?
We've hit on everything I had notes for.
Gotcha.
My biggest contribution was that Chinese origins of Mogwai that you didn't know. I was like, I'm going to bring one thing that Tyler doesn't know about this film in. So.
And I'm glad you did, and it worked out. So, random fun fact about Frank Welker as I'm scrolling through this. He was the penguin vocal effects for Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Wow.
Jim Carrey movie.
Cool. That Jim Carrey movie that no one saw. Yeah.
Fred, the movie. He's Animals.
Oh, no.
Uncredited. Yep.
I mean, it probably bought him a new house, but like, ugh. Oh,
he does a dragon and animals in Shrek Forever After.
He's Dragon?
In Shrek Forever After. Let me try to see if there's any other Shreks on his...
How many Shreks has Frank Welker been in?
Oh, he's Nibbler and Seymour in Futurama.
Oh.
Yep. So just like, I mean, we could literally make a pod just reading his credits.
Yeah, let's not.
That's not, you don't want to do that?
You can go...
Do Do you remember the Ant Bully? He's in that.
Yeah, I do remember the Ant Bully.
I remember kind of liking the Ant Bully, actually.
I did too. That might be one to revisit.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was like a lot of weird like magic and stuff in it that I wasn't expecting. You want to get into review though?
Let's do review.
Okay. Gremlins has an 85% tomatometer and a 78% audience score.
Should be higher.
It's no Tokyo Godfathers nor Klaus, but
this is one metric, all right. So just
it's also the fact that this is like 3 different genres. It's comedy, horror, and Christmas, and like it's not gonna hit all of those notes for everybody. It's not gonna be like a perfect blend of the 3 for everyone. So there's gonna be some people who are like, this was way too cynical for this to be like a good Christmas movie or whatever. That was actually a lot of the reviews I saw, was just people going in and being like, this is way too violent for a feel-good Christmas movie. It's like, that's not what this movie is. Get over yourself. But let's start with Daniel L. Daniel says, wish they had shown more Gizmo since he was so cute, but the rest of the story was still cool. 4 out of 5 stars. Was there enough Gizmo in this movie?
Yeah. I mean, he's basically the second lead, you know? I will say that even though Gremlins 2 kind of repeats his arc in the first one, because he has a little mini arc in this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's scared and bullied, but then in the end, when Stripes got Billy dead to rights with a gun, like, God. I like their kind of monosyllabic, like, talking, and then like, water, yum yum. Milk duds. That's the best line in the movie. Milk duds. Gizmo comes in his little Barbie car that he was watching an old race movie on TV that he really loved and he was mimicking, and then he finds a Barbie car. He drives it in and then hits the wall and explodes and grabs the curtain or whatever it's called and lets in the sunlight and melts Stripe and saves the day, which we never really explain how Billy's not really the hero. I mean, he did blow up the movie theater with all the Gremlins, so he's half the hero. But like, it's really Gizmo who saves the day. So yeah, he has that arc in the first one, but it's more pronounced in the second one. So yeah, I would say Gizmo's in it as much as he needs to be. I mean, they're not gonna kill themselves making these puppets and animatronics and not showcase them, you know?
Right.
Because Chris Walas, like, he loves hamming up his like love-hate relationship with Gizmo. He's like, that fucking thing was the bane of my existence this whole time, you know?
Yeah.
But he's proud of the work that he accomplished with it. So
next review comes from an anonymous user. They say, not quite sure why this gets all the hype and admiration over Critters. The 2 are equally campy and goofy. I enjoyed the first third a lot, and the introduction of Gizmo was awesome. He was great. But when the Gremlins evolved, I found them annoying, over-the-top ridiculous, and no better than the Critters. Pretty overhyped, if you ask me. 2.5 out of 5. Tyler, how's this stack up against Critters?
This could be a whole nother pod. Every once in a while, I come across a Critters is better than Gremlins hot take.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely adore Critters. Do not get, like, it's also like a huge childhood movie for me. I love it. It's considered like the first and best of the Gremlins ripoffs. Came out in 86, Gremlins 84. I mean, the comparisons, they're obvious. Little tiny terrors with sharp teeth, wreaking havoc, causing mayhem. The writers and producers of Critters swear up and down that the script for Critters was written before Gremlins even came out. Who knows? Probably true, maybe not true, maybe they're lying.
Sort of an ants versus a Bug's Life situation.
As far as this person's opinion, okay, I don't know why you gotta pit the 2 against each other, and like, you like Critters more. That's cool. That's fine. Critters rocks. No reason they can't coexist. You know, give me a Gremlins versus Critters movie, which I also wrote at one point.
God damn it, Tyler! You gotta share these scripts with me.
As a child, didn't finish it, but
send me that.
Actually, I remember the story being. Oh man, this is fun. I remember the story for my Gremlins versus Critters treatment being Billy and Gizmo are on a road trip. And I was really paying attention to like lore and continuity here. I'm thinking like road trip, that's like in the day, in the sun. How is he going to just travel with Gizmo the whole time? And like, how am I going to get it? Like, I'm like, there was genetic sunblock that they introduced in Gremlins 2. I'll just have it so Billy has a supply of that he injects Gizmo with so he could be in the sun. And like that way we can have Gremlins and Critters fights in the daytime, and I don't have to like contrive a way like that it can only happen at night and da 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 da. So I really thought it out. And the story, from what I remember, was they're on a road trip because Billy wants to write and illustrate a book about unexplained and inexplicable encounters and phenomenon with otherworldly creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what happened in the two Gremlins movies. And he catches wind of the town of Grover's Bend, which is the town in the first two Critters movies. And he gets there, mayhem ensues, Gremlins, Critters, they fight. Yeah, talking about it now, I'm just like, God, why didn't I finish that? Because that's just like the nerdiest, coolest shit I could possibly think of.
Tyler, if you'll share your cringe fanfic from childhood with me, I'll share my cringe fanfic from childhood with you, and then we'll read them aloud on the podcast. Because I've got one that's basically a Planet Hulk ripoff that also is an X-Men ripoff that's also like a weird exploration of my relationship with Christianity at the time period in middle school, and it is fucking bad. And I would love to do like a comparison.
I would love to do that too, but I don't actually have any of those old stories that I wrote.
I've got that and a very, very long Avatar: The Last Airbender ripoff saved on like a flash drive still. So I can always just go back and be like, ooh, this is what I spent hours and hours of my life in middle school doing.
It's funny because, like, you look into fan fiction and, like, everybody's writing fanfic for anime and for Marvel and Harry Potter and Twilight and, like, all these huge, big franchises. And then I'm here just, like, writing fucking fanfic for,
dude, every franchise
movies about little monsters.
Every franchise has fanfic. Every single one. The fan communities for every franchise are incredibly creative and incredibly cringe in some areas. But I think it's beautiful. We talked about this a bit in our toxic fandom thing, but like I don't want to come across as like engaging with fandom in this way is bad in any sense. I love fan fiction. Hell, I write some fan fiction still to this day, and it's like, it's just this wonderful way to interact with the stories and characters that you already love and try and build upon them and add your own unique flair to them. I love that about fanfic. You know, of course some people can make it super weird and sexual and like badly written, but like, what the fuck ever. It's just something to like show how important these things are to us.
Yeah, and as much as I might have a little bit of embarrassment, like oh my god, he wrote a Critters versus Gremlins fanfic, like that's not like
I would read the hell out of that. And I'm not even a huge fan of either of these franchises.
But like in real life, there have been sillier crossovers in media than that. You know, like. Do you know what you don't? You don't know what Puppet Master and Demonic Toys are.
No.
But there's a crossover between those two movies. Nobody but like goofy horror fans like me know what the fuck the Puppet Master and Demonic Toys are, but they have a crossover movie.
And you know what?
That's way nerdier than Gremlins versus Critters. So I will go back to the well.
And I'm going to throw this out here.
And rewrite this.
I'm going to throw this out here. Some of the greatest pieces of literature ever written are just Bible fan fiction. Dante's Inferno? God. Dante's Inferno? That's fucking Bible fanfic. Paradise Lost? Bible fanfic. Like, all of these different, like, oh, it's biblically inspired stories. It's like, no, this is fanfic of the Bible. Like...
This tome, this doctrine of faith, kicks ass. I will write a story, an epic poem inspired by it.
I'm so into Jesus that I'm going to describe in detail the circles of hell and the layers of heaven to the extent that actual Christians are going to be confused about whether or not my words are actual biblical doctrine or not in the future.
This Bible fucks. It fucks so hard. Oh, God.
The Sistine Chapel, it's just fan art. It's just fan art. You know, Adam touching the hand of God.
It really is. It really is just fan art.
The whole Renaissance was just fan art.
I don't know why I never came to that conclusion myself before, but you're kind of blowing my mind.
It's like this idea that fan fiction is like a lesser form of fiction and like fan art is a lesser form of art. It's this bullshit new capitalist idea that we have that like taking prior stories and making new stories and imagery and symbolism out of them is somehow bad. That's how storytelling has functioned for millennia. Storytelling works, and art works by building upon the shoulders of giants. This idea that, like, you're not a real artist or you're not a real writer if you're only doing fan art and fanfic is horseshit. Like, if you make good fiction or good art, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're the creator, you're the original creator or not. You're doing good shit.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really dived into fan fiction much, but I'm not going to argue against it. Like, hell yeah, write your goddamn fanfic. I know I have. Like, I was writing this shit like before I knew that there was a thing called fanfic.
And think about this. So. You know what the MCU is? The MCU is fucking fanfic. It's just, it's licensed fanfic. It's retellings of the original Marvel stories that existed and expansions of that. Like the only thing that separates Disney Marvel from you is they have a budget and they have the copyright.
Pretty much. I mean, they have all the budget and all the copyright, but that's really the only separation.
But there's no like separation of actual like artistic skill there. It's like anyway, that was a wild tangent.
That's what makes these entertaining, man.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to get over my insecurities and actually commit to writing some of this shit again, because I don't know if you remember, but I started writing my own original quote unquote Tiny Terrors. That's kind of the unofficial affectionate term for movies like Gremlins and Critters.
Mm-hmm.
I started writing my own. It was kind of like that, but then it morphed into being about aliens. I had this great idea that I thought it was a great idea, and I wrote a good like. If it was a script, I wrote it in prose. But if it was a script, like the whole first act, basically. Before I realized that I was ripping off a movie I had never seen. Do you remember Aliens in the Attic?
Oh my god, yes.
I literally ripped off that movie, and like
that's hilarious.
My fic was about these diminutive aliens that are like war hungry, and like they have like Napoleon complex. Like even though they're tiny, like they're vicious and they're mean and they're like they just want to wreck shit. And like they come to Earth and land in somebody's house, and like they have to fight off the family, and the family has to fight off the aliens. And like I'm like, this is fun. This is gonna be good. And like it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Like I'm just, like mid sentence. I'm just like, wait a fucking second,
dude. You should still do it.
And then I look it up. I'm like, damn it! I'm writing Aliens in the Attic.
You could write a better Aliens in the Attic though. Originality counts for so little.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. Like. It might sound like cliche and like faux intellectual to say like there is no real originality, but there really isn't. Like
every story's been told. It's just a telling.
Truly original.
Yeah,
nothing is truly original.
And if you're embarrassed about writing it, if you're like, oh no, like write it under a pseudonym. That's the great thing about the internet is that you can do this completely anonymously, and like you throw it out there, and if nobody likes it or nobody says anything about it, then what the fuck ever. It's like they'll never know who you are.
Yeah.
Do it. I always encourage.
Maybe I should beat Aliens in the Attic at its own game.
Hell
I've still never seen it.
Don't watch it. Finish your script, then go back and watch it, and then be like, wow, I did a much better one. And then you pitch it to Hollywood for Aliens in the Attic 2, and then they're like, hell yes, we're going to reboot this franchise just for you, because you're going to make it, this will be You're the Fly, where it's better than the original.
Or, better yet, like, this is the best movie about little monsters since Gremlins. You have $50 million to make this movie.
Well, we're going to put you on Gremlins 4.
Well, at this point, Gremlins 4, then Gremlins 3 would have come out.
Yeah.
So this is really the best case scenario.
Exactly. This is your dream. I am all about encouraging people to follow their creative passions. Like, don't be embarrassed. Like, the internet is such a perfect place to do this, because again, you can do this shit anonymously. Go on some fanfic website or some fan art website, post your shit online, and don't use your real name, because first off, you shouldn't be reusing your real name on the internet anyway, and second, it's like, you can throw it out there, and if tons of people like it, then hooray, awesome. You get the benefit of tons of people liking your shit. And if nobody likes it, like in this fucking podcast that you and I do together, like, what's the big deal? At least you had fun making it, you know? It's just, like, put it out there, and if people like it, great. If not, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just the experience of making it and throwing it out there was worth it.
Yeah, I could be like Billy in Gremlins. I could just do my art and just go for it, and then get a job working for somebody that's a parody of Donald Trump, like in Gremlins 2.
It's not even about making it a living. I know you're joking, but it's not even about, like, we have this damned idea that creativity only exists for the purpose of making us money, and like,
yes, you're absolutely
becoming
right. Yep.
It's not supposed to get you rich and famous. It's supposed to be an expression of self, an expression of the passion that you hold in your heart. It's like, that's the point of art.
Yeah, but God, society makes doing art for the sake of doing art so hard, because we've been conditioned to think, like, if we're not producing something that's monetary or for somebody else, then it's a waste of time. Or
we've got to fight against that.
Or we should monetize our passions, because, like, what's the point if you're not gonna make money off of it?
We need more artists going out there and just doing what they love because they love it. And that's okay. Do not take what I'm saying right now as you shouldn't support artists. You absolutely should. If you're one of those assholes who takes somebody else's art and then reposts it to your own page or something, you're an asshole, you know? This isn't like you shouldn't give credit to artists because, if they're really doing it, then they just would love to see their own stuff spread around, regardless of whether or not they're getting credit or money from it. It's like, no, everybody wants to get credit for what they do, of course, but it's not about making money off of what you do. Yes, people make a living off of making art. Yes, there are professional artists out there, but not everyone has to be a professional artist. You can just make the things that, like, bring you joy to put out there.
Yeah.
This is such a wild tangent for me to get on in the Gremlins podcast.
No, it's not, because just like our tangents in this podcast, we are honoring the Gremlins because they are nothing but chaotic tangents. They are the embodiment of tangent. They are nature's tangents.
And this was specifically...
See, it all comes together.
This tangent specifically came off of the review that just compared it to Critters. It was just out of nowhere.
Did we even finish review?
No, there's so many more reviews to go through.
Next review.
Let's get into the next review. Park J. Park says, good CGI, good stop motion, good cute Gizmo, but the main... CGI. Do what? There's no... Yeah, I know, I saw that too. There's no CGI in this. It was 1984. Cute Gizmo, but the main character, Billy, didn't do anything cool or good. He just got beat up. 4.5 out of 5 stars. We kind of talked about that, but yeah, that's
hilarious. They like the movie. I'm gonna maybe be prejudiced a little and assume that this person's younger because they think there's CGI in this movie.
Yeah.
But hey, if they thought some of this was CGI, that's just a testament to how good the effects hold up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny. I was like, Billy's kind of sucks. Doesn't do anything cool. That's the point. He's not supposed to be badass. He's not a superhero. He's a dork that gets his ass kicked by a 2-foot tall imp and gets saved by his pet that's only like a foot tall. Not even. Gizmo's not even a foot tall.
No. Here's a fun one from Natasha S, and it's going to be everything that you don't want to hear because it's a very negative review. But
Natasha, why you got to do me like this?
It's also hilariously written. Natasha S says, "Dear Mr. Spielberg,
oh God,
Gremlins was the worst film I have ever seen. None of the film made sense. How did the Gremlins know how to play poker and cut brake wires?
Jesus Christ.
The baseball bat would have not taken that long to saw through. The boy who had an arrow in his arm didn't even get a moment's sympathy. The dog was the main plot at the start and then disappeared for most of the movie, and the ending wasn't even happy for a Christmas film. There was too much graphic violence. Microwaving a gremlin? But my main problem is the sheer bluntness and carefree comments about while most people open their present, a lot are opening their wrists. Not only was that comment disregarded, but the role of the girl was so depressing. My boyfriend paid 3.5 euros? Pounds to watch this film, but I wouldn't even pay 50 euros / pounds, I don't know what that symbol means, to watch it again. I think you need to consider the audience age and theme of Christmas closer and come back with more light-hearted comedy for that time of year. If this is the best you can come up with, you need to rethink being a director. Sincerely, not a fan. 0.5 out of 5 stars.
Where to fucking start? One, Spielberg didn't direct this movie; he produced it. So your condescending letter should be directed to Joe Dante, Natasha. So learn how film production works and the roles therein. I was curious about how this was going to go, and you said that like I would hate this review. I was hoping it would just be a matter of like, and it kind of is, like, oh, it's just like the tone of it wasn't for me. But she had to frame it as a letter, a freaking Karen, like writing like a patronizing letter, and then she has to go into like picking apart the internal logic of how do they know how to play poker and cut breaks. Like, if that's how you watch movies, especially movies about like magical creatures that don't exist, like you're watching movies wrong. Like, you're not doing it right. Like, you're supposed to meet movies on their own terms and then evaluate how you feel about it after you've met it on its own terms. I wouldn't have a problem with this review if it wasn't so patronizing and condescending and holier than thou. It's just, I hate that kind of shit. It's so obnoxious. It's so obnoxious. Well, I hope your boyfriend or fiance, whoever she said, I hope he enjoyed the film because he paid £350 for it.
Yeah.
Or shillings or
sterling. I don't fucking know. God, I'm so American. I can't even look at this symbol and even come close. It's the one that looks like a cursive E. Like,
I think that's pound.
I think that's pound.
I don't know. We're being ignorant Americans about it.
I'm American citizen.
Is there a date on the review?
There probably was, but I copied and pasted into like a Google Doc, so
okay.
Yeah, I don't go through these on the website when I have them just because there's so many to swim through.
I still kind of like the fact that this movie is almost, God, is it 40 years old yet? That this movie that's basically 40 years old is still surprising to people to the point where they hate it. You know, that's cool. Where they still don't know what to expect, even though like this movie is still kind of everywhere, like as far as merchandise and stuff is concerned. So that's cool.
Yeah. Last review that we'll do. This is from Brian P., which is, I think, just a pseudonym for Tyler E. Brian says, Gremlins is a Christmas classic. If you disagree, I don't want to know you. 5 out of 5 stars.
Hey, man, Brian, we should watch Gremlins together. Yes, it is a Christmas classic, and I've always seen it as a Christmas movie, and I don't think it's really ever been up for debate that it isn't. Unlike Die Hard, you know, there's that entire freaking internet thing of, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Is it not a Christmas movie? Let's talk about it every freaking year. Yeah, I've really never actually come across the opinion that Gremlins isn't a Christmas movie. And if I have, like, few and far in between, even though it's like cynical and jaded and funny, like, it's still a Christmas movie. Like, it still has Christmas themes in it, about learning a lesson.
Yeah, even if you argue that it's not thematically a Christmas movie, it's so aesthetically tied to Christmas, and so much of the Christmas time element plays a part in the narrative that, like, even if it's not, like, goodwill towards men, generosity, all those themes that you expect from a Christmas film, it's definitely still a Christmas film in the fact that, like, Christmas is central to this story.
Yeah, and it's a Christmas fable. That's what it really is. I mean, it opens and closes with narration from the father, Like, if anything, like, sets something up as, like, a fable or a tale or a fairy tale, like,
if anything, it's kind of like narration. If anything, it's kind of like some of the European, like, Yule time, like, fables and stuff, that, like, the Yule cat and stuff. It's like, this is also a Christmas tradition, but it's like a bit scary. Like, if you're not good, you'll have your kids will be taken by a giant cat, or Krampus will come and beat them with reeds.
That's exactly it. And I keep saying fairy tale. I mean, but only because, like, so much of the movie's subtext and presentation presents it as, like, it's there. Like, the final voiceover monologue of the dad, it's something right out of, like, a story, a bedtime story that you would read to your kids, if your refrigerator screws up or your washing machine conks out, before you call the repairman, turn on all the lights, check under all the beds, you never can tell, there might be a gremlin in your house. Like, that's pure, like, fairy tale stuff, like, meant to, like, scare your kids, to, like, teach them to be good and, like, respectful and stuff like that. Like, there's no getting around that, It's totally a Christmas movie.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations? I know we already talked about Critters probably at length, but
I definitely recommend Critters. The first 3 Critters movies, ignore everything else that came after. I'll talk about them a little bit because I love them too. Gremlins was kind of made to emulate old school monster features, but with, like, a ironic twist, whereas Critters was meant to be more of a straightforward modernization, modern for the time, the mid-'80s update of that. Nuclear family, small farm, creatures from space. It's really fun. It also has humor, but not, like, ironic humor like Gremlins. Man, I'm talking so much my voice is cracking.
We've been talking for like 2 hours straight.
The design differences between Gremlins and Critters is fun because I love the design of the Gremlins. They're kind of reptilian, dark brownish green, and their big bat ears and their big red devilish eyes. And Critters are cool because they're these little puffballs. They're just these little dudes that are just all fur and teeth, and they have little nubby legs, little nubby hands, and they explicitly eat people. That's what they're there for. They're hungry. They need to eat and they need to feed. But what's also cool is that they also have some personality. They're also kind of mischievous, just not to the point of Gremlins. They're intelligent. They know how to, fly spaceships and stuff like that. And they have their own language. There's a great moment in the first Critters where they're chasing the family back into the house, and they barely get the door closed, and then the mom has a shotgun, and then there were 2 critters on the porch, like, what do we do now? And then the gun, you see the gun come out of the crack of the door and shoot one into pieces, and then the other just yells, fuck! Like, it's subtitled. It's subtitled, just fuck! And then he rolls away. What's cool about the Critters is that they can tuck themselves in the little Sonic the Hedgehog balls and roll around. And they also have porcupine spikes that shoot out, and they're poisonous. And if they get you, you become lethargic and sleepy. This is another tangent, but who cares? I love that detail about the Critters, is their spines. It's never explained. Like, it's really good visual storytelling. Like, you get shot with a critter spine, you become sleepy and lethargic, and, like, it's never explained why, but it's because so they can eat you. so they don't have to chase you, and so they can eat you better. So that's just a cool little detail. I like that. They don't explicitly explain the spines. The first one's great. It takes place in a farm. Second one's just as good. It takes place on Easter, so it's a good holiday movie, just like Gremlins. Takes place in the town, so it has bigger scale. Critters 2 is more overtly Gremlins because they get up to much more manic hijinks. There's a scene a lot like the bar scene in Gremlins where they're in a fast food joint wreaking havoc. A lot of people don't like the third and the fourth one. The fourth one does suck, but I have a soft spot for the third one because it was the first one I saw. And I still think it holds up as a fun monster movie. And it's notable for being Leonardo DiCaprio's first credit. So if you're a Leonardo DiCaprio fan and you want to see his first movie, watch Critters 3. So yeah, the Critters franchise. There's a whole slew of ripoffs of Gremlins in the 80s. There's the Ghoulies franchise. The only one you need to watch of that one is Ghoulies 2. Trust me, the only one you need. Well, no, Ghoulies 3 where they're in college. Here's Ghoulies. The first one sucks because there's barely any Ghoulies in it. The second one's awesome. It takes place at a carnival. And the third one, the Ghoulies go to college. It's what it's called. Ghoulies 3, Ghoulies go to college. And for some reason, the Ghoulies talk in that one. Yeah. They don't talk in the first two, but they talk in the third one. So I can give Isaac a chance here to recommend something.
Oh, I don't have any. I've left this completely open to you.
Okay. Well, then I'll keep going.
Yeah. Just just explain the entire Tiny Chit Terrors genre for me real quick.
That's the thing. Like, many as there are, not all of them are. A lot of them aren't that good.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Aliens in the Attic. I'm assuming we should watch that because it was apparently so influential to the genre that you tried to rip it off without having even seen it.
Apparently.
So that might go on the list for some time down the line.
There is Hobgoblins. Hobgoblins is a so bad it's good movie. Its reputation is up there with like Troll 2.
This is wildly off topic, but who was the original Hobgoblin in the Spider-Man comics?
Roderick Kingsley?
I have no fucking clue who that character is.
The backstory behind Hobgoblin is convoluted as balls. It is insane because, editorial and shit like that. And
yeah.
Roger Stern, who started the whole Hobgoblin mystery, he had an overarching master plan for how he was going to pay it off. But he suddenly left the book before wrapping it up. So editorial just bungled it and screwed it up, and it's a mess. A lot of people think Ned Leeds is the Hobgoblin, the original Hobgoblin, for some reason, even though he's not at all. And they want Ned in the MCU to become the Hobgoblin. This is a tangent. Ned was technically the Hobgoblin for a little bit, but only because he was tricked and brainwashed into being him as a diversion.
When are we going to get our Clone Saga? When are we going to get that storyline?
I would be into Ben Reilly coming into the MCU. Why not?
We're already getting our One Last Day arc. When are we going to get the fucking Clone Saga?
MCU adapting hated comic storylines into something that people actually like.
I'm excited for the new Spider-Man No Way Home or whatever. It looks fun, and it's going to be basically a live-action Spider-Verse, but you gotta admit, it's kind of the same plot as the fucking One Last Day, where he sells his marriage to the devil to get his secret identity back.
There's actually another story it's actually closer to that I haven't read. Mm-hmm. I can't remember what it's called, but I think there's actually another story that's where he actually goes to Doctor Strange for a spell. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, yeah? Never read it, so don't you quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's more inspired by.
Fucking Kraven. I want Kraven.
Here's where Sony comes in. Sony is planning a Kraven solo movie.
What?
Yeah.
Stop making solo villain movies. They're only fun in the context of Okay, Venom was actually pretty good. I need to watch the Venom.
Venom 2 is really fun.
Is it?
I just watched it. And no spoilers because you haven't seen it, but stick around for the end credits.
I've heard that they're starting to connect it to the MCU.
Yeah, well, there you go. You've had it spoiled. That's what it is. They're connecting it to the MCU.
Oh boy. All right. Anyway, wildly off topic. Continue with your Tiny Terrors recommendations. You were at Hobgoblins.
Yes, Hobgoblins.
So bad it's good.
So bad it's good on the links, unlike the levels of like Troll 2 as far as cult esteem is concerned. It's when I say it's bad, it's bad. It's low budget, terrible acting. But there's a fun kind of story to it. Mm-hmm. Even the Hobgoblins themselves, they're just puppets. They're just puppets with like hands up the ass. But they're fun. What they do is they can make you see your biggest dreams, like your wildest dreams, your fantasies. So not only are they like Gremlins ripoffs that like want to cause trouble and go crazy, they also have this power where they can manifest your wildest dreams into like just this grand illusion. Although the movie's low budget, so somebody's wildest dreams looks terrible on screen because there's no budget off.
Yeah,
but that's the fun little twist to the story there. God, then there's Munchies. It's been years since I've seen Munchies. I don't remember much of it, but it's still in my head because I watched every little Tiny Terror movie I could possibly get my hands on. The only thing I can remember about Munchies is that like I think they find them in like a cave, some kind of excavation, and then it's just basically a Gremlins ripoff. Like they multiply, they cause havoc in a town, and that's it. And then I guess for something more modern, Krampus. I showed you Krampus a while ago. I don't think you liked it that much.
It was okay. We might review it somewhere down the line.
Written and directed by Michael Dougherty, who penned some of the early X-Men movies and Trick or Treat, which is another movie you didn't like, which is a new classic for the Halloween season. He was greatly inspired by Gremlins. It's the same kind of tone, a cynical takedown of Christmas, except obviously Krampus is involved. Where the Tiny Terror comes in is that he possesses a hoard of toys in the attic. Like there's the possessed bear, teddy bear with sharp teeth. There's a possessed Christmas tree angel, a robot. So that's where the Tiny Terror aspect comes in. But the overall like tone and humor is similar to Gremlins for that.
Yeah, a bit darker. A bit darker. I think Krampus was a bit darker and a little less comedy.
Yeah, it's more cynical than Gremlins, really.
Definitely more cynical.
But there definitely is dark humor to it. Yeah, I think that'll be it for Rex.
All right, time to rate this sucker.
Perfect movie. Infinity out of 10. If you haven't seen it, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Gremlins. Make it a perennial Christmas watch in your household. I'm
going to go ahead and give our arbitrary score. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 Gizmo Spawn.
Okay. A little bit too middling with that 3 out of 5 there, but I'll
that's how many Spawn there were from Gizmo. He had 5 Mogwai jump out of him.
Yes, he did originally have 5 Mogwai.
Okay. I think that about wraps it up.
2 hours.
2 hours, not a bad review.
2 hours of Gremlins talk.
Nice. Well, partly Gremlins and then a few wild tangents thrown in there for good measure. I think that's going to make it this even better. Thank you all so much for joining us here at Tongue and Cheer. Thank you for following us through this sort of like first season of Tongue and Geek. I think this will be our 16th episode. No, actually, this might be 17th or 18th that we put out. We started about halfway through the year, and I'm really enjoying making these, even though we don't really have an audience yet. But maybe somewhere down the line, somebody will start listening to these. And I've really enjoyed doing these holiday-themed ones, both the Halloween and the Christmas ones. We're going to take a break for the holidays, so probably won't be posting anything until maybe mid or late January for new Tongue and Geek episodes. We've got some older stuff that we've already recorded, but that we haven't posted yet, and those will start really coming out around mid-January. Until then, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and just remember, don't throw your baby in the trash.
Don't throw your baby in the trash, and, watch out for Gremlins.
Bye.